Kamala Harris's pick is in, and it is Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. I could not be more excited. I'm going to bring you all the details in just a moment. Remember, we can only go live like this because of our members. Daily Wire Plus members have unlimited on-demand access to our uncensored, ad-free daily shows, real-time breaking news, investigative journalism. Do not be left in the dark. Join the fight right now at dailywire.com/subscribe. So it is Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, and you can see that I'm a little pleased about this. And there are many reasons that I am pleased about this. The biggest reason that I am pleased about this is because the mask is off. Kamala Harris has been attempting to present herself as a moderate. She keeps switching all of her positions. She'll send out her surrogates to pretend that she doesn't hold the thing now that she held 4 years ago. And now it has been proved it is all a lie. She wants to please her radical base. That is all. She is running a base election. And this is so online. It is so brat, as the kids say. It is so weirdly clique. I mean, she is absolutely ignoring the moderate votes she needs to win in order to please a base of people who are radical. She has opened herself up wide to every attack on her radicalism by picking Tim Walz. See, there was another pick that was available, and everyone sort of expected that person to be picked. That person, of course, was the Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. Pennsylvania has 18 electoral votes. Josh Shapiro has a 61% approval rating in Pennsylvania. Very easy pick. Super, super simple pick for Kamala Harris. And we know why she didn't pick Josh Shapiro. And the reason is because he's a Jew. It's that simple. Everyone knows this. Democrats know this. Republicans know this. Before we even get to the insanity of picking Tim Walz, you have to understand the insanity of not picking Josh Shapiro, which is why I'm so pleased today. Because Josh Shapiro is a very talented politician. Josh Shapiro has portrayed himself successfully in Pennsylvania, a purple state, as a moderate, which is, again, why he has the approval of 6 in 10 voters in a swing state. And Kamala Harris overlooked him because she didn't want to piss off her pro-Hamas base. It is that simple. She has too many radicals in her base who don't want the Jew. Now, Tim Walz, positionally, is actually not very different from Josh Shapiro on Israel, but that's not the question. The question is, Josh Shapiro is a semi-observant Jew. He is somebody who has expressed Zionist bona fides, and this was very bad. This could not be accepted. In fact, Josh Shapiro, in expectation of possibly being picked by Kamala Harris, had already started to moderate his positions on Israel in an attempt to please the Democrats' pro-Hamas base. Back when he was 20, he'd written a piece that was perfectly obvious in which he said there would be no Palestinian state because the Palestinians are far too radicalized and want the destruction of the state of Israel. Well, over the course of the last 3 days, he tried to walk that back. He tried to say, well, I don't believe that anymore. I believe in a two-state solution. Here is Josh Shapiro sacrificing his actual beliefs in favor of a not vice presidential slot, as it turns out. Again, this is the person she should have picked, and she didn't, and we all know why, and the answer rhymes with Jew. Here is Josh Shapiro.
Philadelphia Inquirer is writing about a 1993 college article you wrote where you expressed skepticism about a two-state solution. I understand you do support a two-state solution now. Can you kind of just talk about that evolution?
Something I wrote when I was 20? Is that what you're talking about? I was 20. Look, I have said for years, long before October 7th, that I favor a two-state solution. Israelis and Palestinians living peacefully side by side, being able to determine their own futures and their own destinies, being able to work as they want and worship as they want, and understand the power of living peacefully side by side and how that will lift up both parties in this, or both sides of this conversation.
Again, this was Josh Shapiro trying to moderate his own positions on Israel in order to please the pro-Hamas base. It turns out the thing they object to is not really his position on Israel. The thing they object to is that Josh Shapiro was a Jew. And that's not me saying that. That is Democrats saying that. That is Jared Moskowitz from Florida. Quote, Josh's position on Israel is almost identical to everybody else, but he's being held to a different standard. So you have to ask yourself why. Debbie Wasserman Schultz of Florida. It's been noticeable that of all the people that she is carefully considering, the only Jewish candidate is getting excruciating, very specific scrutiny, particularly around his position on Israel. House Democrat Jake Auchincloss from Massachusetts, he said that it's pretty obvious that Democrats were attacking Josh Shapiro based on the fact that he was a Jew. Here was Jake Auchincloss saying precisely that just yesterday. Is clip 16.
Those in the overly online left who are attacking Josh Shapiro's pro-Israel positions in a different way than they are attacking non-Jewish Veep contenders' positions, they're just telling on themselves. There is a strong undercurrent of anti-Semitism to that. It's unacceptable. Every contenders' positions on all policy issues, their track records in elective office, all of that is fair game. That is totally open to be subjected to interrogation and to questioning by the Harris team, by observers, but holding him to a different standard because of his religion just simply isn't who we are as a Democratic Party.
Again, this is great. And the reason it's great is because clarity is a good thing. I'm very pleased by the fact that the Democratic Party has been very clear on this. They can have somebody who is at least titularly pro-Israel in Tim Walz, so long as he's not a Jew. It's the Jew from the swing state that Kamala Harris needs to win and is currently running in a dead heat with Donald Trump, who could not be picked for one simple reason. There are too many members of the Democratic Party base who don't like Jews. And that is particularly true, unfortunately, in minority communities among the Democrat base. That is true by poll data. It's unfortunate, but it is a reality. So there are many things that are betrayed by the Tim Walz pick. But thing number one, can't have a Jew. That is the number one thing betrayed by the Tim Walz pick by Kamala Harris. Thing number two, of course, is that she is full-scale radical. She is full-scale radical. Remember, Tim Walz is Bernie Sanders from Minnesota. He's Bernie Sanders with a Fargo accent. That's all he is. He is a radical leftist. We're going to get to everything Tim Walz related in just 1 second. It's so mind-bogglingly stupid, and that's why I'm so excited about it. Mind-bogglingly stupid. The first rule of a vice presidential pick is first, do no harm. And she just harmed herself. Why? Well, because she forewent the opportunity to pick, a popular swing state governor. She didn't pick Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan. She picked somebody from a state Republicans haven't won for several decades. And then she proceeded to pick somebody who underscores her own radicalism. Her entire campaign thus far has been lying about everything she believes. Everything. Like, she's no longer in favor of a fracking ban. She's no longer in favor of gun seizures. She's no longer in favor of radically increasing taxes. She's a moderate, you see. But then she picked somebody who is the most radical person who is on the short list, thus opening herself up wide to every charge that she is a radical. It's absolute incompetence. She is too online. She's just too online. She was hearing too much from the online crowd. And what this truly betrays, and this is the reason I'm the most excited, what it truly betrays as somebody who wants Donald Trump to win, is that Kamala Harris is still politically incompetent. She was politically incompetent in 2019 when she ran for president because she was too online. She had audience capture from her radical base, and she kept trying to please them. And then she would kind of back away from it, moderate a little bit, and then she would try to please them and then back away. She has not changed one iota. No, there is no new Kamala. On the right, there's always this is the moment Donald Trump changed and became president. And it never is that. Donald Trump, it turns out, is always Donald Trump, and Kamala Harris is always Kamala Harris. Obnoxious, arrogant, radical, stupid, because this is a stupid campaign move, a full-scale, full-stop, stupid campaign move by Kamala Harris. We'll get to who Tim Walz is, because you've never heard of him, and nobody had until a week ago, until he came out of left field, because Democrats needed somebody who was titularly from the Midwest, even in a non-swing state, just so they could pick the person who wasn't a Jew. We'll get to that in just 1 second. First, there's only one cell phone company that gives you free premium access to the media you actually care about. That is Pure Talk. This might be the best offer Pure Talk has ever come out with. Listen to this. When you switch your cell phone service to Pure Talk on a qualifying plan, you get a free 1-year insider subscription to Daily Wire Plus. That is correct. Take advantage of unlimited talk, unlimited text, 15 gigs of data, and mobile hotspot on America's most dependable 5G network for just $35 a month. And you get 1 year free of Daily Wire Plus. The Daily Wire Plus insider plan gets you access to our entire library of movies, series, documentaries, including Lady Ballers, What is a Woman, Mr. Bertram Run, Hide, Fight, and more. Plus, you get our daily shows uncensored, ad-free. The only way you can get all of that is by going to puretalk.com/Shapiro. I've been telling you to stop overpaying for your cell phone plan for a very long time. If you haven't made the switch on over to Pure Talk yet, now would be the best time. I myself have been using Pure Talk for years. My coverage is excellent. You can have that excellent coverage. Plus, 1 year free of Daily Wire Plus Insider with a qualifying plan. Go to puretalk.com/Shapiro today. Switch to that qualifying plan. Get 1 year free of Daily Wire Plus Insider. That's puretalk.com/Shapiro today. So you may be reading in my expression, excitement. Again, and you might be saying to yourself, wait a second, isn't anti-Semitism bad? And the answer is yes. But you know what is worse to me? Lies. And it is a lie that the Democratic Party is not full-scale comfortable with anti-Semitism. And they are willing to pick a radical who undermines Kamala Harris's entire message, which is supposed to be moderation, which is supposed to be stability. And instead, they picked a man who lives in a van down by the river, because that's what Tim Walz looks like. He's going to be played by Ed Asner in the movie. Okay, according to the Wall Street Journal, who is Tim Walz? Well, after graduating in 1989 with a social science degree from Chadron State College in Nebraska, that's some auspicious stuff. He spent a year teaching in China before returning to full-time status at the National Guard and then a teaching career. He eventually landed about 80 miles southwest of Minneapolis in Mankato, Minnesota, where he taught social studies, coached high school football, and raised 2 children with his wife, Gwen. He also continued in the National Guard, where he specialized in field artillery and did a tour overseas, but he never saw combat. After 24 years in the National Guard, he retired as a command sergeant major before he first ran for Congress in 2006. He was then in his early 40s. He entered politics and managed to unseat a 6-term Republican congressman in a mostly rural southern Minnesota district, running as a moderate. And it turns out he was lying. He spent 12 years in Congress. Then he ran for governor as someone willing to compromise with Republicans. He won by 11 percentage points in 2018, which was almost 4 points higher than his 2022 re-elect victory, where he only won by 7. Well, why would that be? It's because he's a radical. He's a radical. Yes, indeed he do. So let's go through his record as the governor of Minnesota, because it's quite terrible, actually. According to the Wall Street Journal, Minnesota became something of a laboratory in 2023 for many of the Democratic Party's goals, once Walz had a legislature fully controlled by Democrats. So this is what Kamala Harris's administration would look like. This is what Tim Walz wants America to look like. Besides establishing the goal of a carbon-free electrical grid by 2040, by the way, great idea. Carbon-free electrical grid means a non-working electrical grid. Just get ready for it. And that is particularly smart in a place like Minnesota that gets incredibly cold and where intermittent energy being provided to people's homes actually ends up really, really badly, as Texas learned when it relied too heavily on wind and solar in the middle of a giant cold snap. The state also passed paid family and medical leave, sick leave, transgender rights protections, which we'll get to, a tax credit aimed at low-income parents, and $1 billion in investment in affordable housing. Barack Obama was super pleased by Tim Walz at the time. He tweeted, "If you need a reminder, elections have consequences. Check out what's happening in Minnesota." Well, Walz moved dramatically to the left. Republican Paul Gazelka was an insurance agent, former state Senate majority leader. He said Walz was more of a moderate when he elected. But then, quote, he morphed into an extreme liberal who matches Kamala Harris. So here's what you got on the ticket. A lady who tried to bribe out Black Lives Matter rioters and the governor who let those Black Lives Matter rioters completely wreck Minneapolis. In fact, for just a short version of what Governor Walz's term has looked like, his first term, Mike Murphy, who ran against him for governor in 2022, cut the following ad. And here is just a short version of Tim Walz's stellar record in Minnesota, which is why Kamala Harris picked him, of course.
I've just signed Executive Order 20-01, declaring a peacetime state of emergency for the state of Minnesota. We need to stop congregating. We're going to close the bars. We're going to close the restaurants. We're going to close the places where we gather. Several 100,000 of your neighbors were just laid off. An entire industry has been shut down in the face of this, all for the greater good.
The governor, with the power of the state constitution behind him, has issued 104 executive orders affecting everything from schools to restaurants and bars to churches to basically every facet of everyday life.
Democrats who control the House are moving in the opposite direction. Some are pushing to put a mask mandate in state law.
Hi-ho, the jam Rio, I wear a mask to school. It helps to keep me safe.
Explosive testimony from a Minneapolis police union official who says that the governor ordered cops to abandon that 3rd precinct during this spring's rioting.
I was in the command post. I heard it. I heard the governor say, "Give it up."
At 9:32, Chief Arredondo calls the mayor to tell him they've lost control, can no longer maintain order in the city. And then at 10:13, Chief Arredondo, who's monitoring the scene from a couple blocks away, gets on the radio to announce defeat.
Get a citywide tone right now in our loss of the 3rd precinct.
The 3rd precinct has been compromised.
The mayor said I request the National Guard. Ooh, I'm out. This is great. We're going to have massively trained troops. No, you're going to have 19-year-olds who are cooked.
Okay, so what exactly did Governor Tim Walz do? We'll get to more on that in a moment because he is the most radical candidate she could have picked. I'm very excited about this. Again, it betrays that she has no political instincts, none. She is a completely manufactured creation. Her pick of Tim Walz shows it. She's a completely manufactured creation controlled by the media and controlled by her base. It's that simple. Remember, the breaking news is that Tim Walz, not Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, again, it's so stupid it boggles the mind, but good for her for being an idiot. Kamala Harris has picked Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, for her vice presidential candidate. We'll get to more on Tim Walz's record in just one moment. First, Grand Canyon University private Christian university in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, GCU believes we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. GCU believes in equal opportunities and that the American dream starts with a purpose. GCU equips you to serve others in ways that promote human flourishing and create a ripple effect of transformation for generations to come. By honoring your career calling, you impact your family, your friends, and your community. So whether you're pursuing a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree, GCU's online, on-campus, and hybrid learning environments are designed to help you achieve your unique academic, personal, and professional goals. With over 330 academic programs as of December 2023, GCU meets you where you are and provides a path to help you fulfill your dreams. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu. That's gcu.edu. Okay, so let's begin with Governor Walz's action during the Black Lives Matter riots of 2020, which, of course, were the biggest news during his term as the Minnesota governor. So first of all, he acknowledged his, quote, abject failure of his response to the violent protests that happened in Minneapolis that basically burned down the city. You may remember this footage from Minneapolis streets under the gentle reign of Governor Tim Walz. Looks like a war zone. And of course, it would look like a war zone because Tim Walz, among other Democratic politicians in the state of Minnesota, decided that it was absolutely necessary to allow rioters to burn down streets, to loot stores, to tear apart the city, to shoot people in the name of racial justice, to take over police stations. That was Governor Tim Walz who presided over all of this. Walz said, quote, Minneapolis and St. Paul are on fire. The fire is still smoldering on our streets. The ashes are symbolic of decades and generations of pain, of anguish unheard. Oh, wow, poetic language about people burning down, you know, the biggest city in his state. Well done, Tim Walz. Here, in fact, was Tim Walz talking about the George Floyd riot, saying this has been brewing for 400 years, which is why people are burning down entire cities in his state, and he wasn't calling out the National Guard.
These are things that have been brewing in this country for 400 years.
And then, reluctantly, he said, we can't have like the looting and the recklessness, but he didn't send the National Guard until too late, until the city had basically been taken over and destroyed.
We cannot have the looting and the recklessness that went on. We cannot have it because we can't function as a society, and I refuse to have it take away the attention of the stain that we need to be working on.
Absolutely ridiculous. So while Kamala Harris was bailing out the rioters, she's now the presidential candidate, her vice presidential candidate was presiding over the burning down of the city and claiming that the real problem with the burning down of the city, it was like a Norm Macdonald joke. The real problem isn't the burning down of the city and the hurting of people and the destruction of businesses and the full-scale criminality. The real problem, of course, is that it undermined the cause, according to Tim Walz. He says, now generations of pain is manifesting itself in front of the world, and the world is watching. He cited a call he received from a state senator who described her district, quote, on fire. No police, no firefighters, no social control. Constituents locked in houses wondering what they were going to do. That is an abject failure that cannot happen. Abject failure would make a great ad against Tim Walz and against Kamala Harris. And just amazing job here by Kamala Harris in picking the person who presided over the rioters she attempted to bail out of prison. Really, really solid stuff there from Tim Walz. But don't worry, his radicalism wasn't just restricted to the BLM riots. So he had this lengthy wish list that got passed in 2023. And Walz said, our wish list is a to-do list, and we're checking it off. So what exactly is in that to-do list? According to the Minneapolis Post, with the help of a $17.5 billion surplus, that would have been $19 billion had the DFL, which is the Democratic Farmer Labor Party, not changed the way inflation was included mid-session. The 2023-2025 budget will be 40% higher than the current budget. So this dude loved his spending. He increased the budget by 40%. Democrats then codified abortion rights, paid family and medical leave, transgender rights protections, which we'll get to in a moment, driver's licenses for illegal immigrants. So this new administration, this Kamala Harris-Walz administration, they're going to be tough on the border. So tough that the new VP candidate wants driver's licenses for illegal immigrants in the state of Minnesota. Restoration of voting rights for felons. Oh, isn't that nice? Wider voting access. A $1 billion investment in affordable housing, including for rental assistance. So you could not find a person who is more radical than Tim Walz. Also adopted under Tim Walz's governorship, background checks for private gun transfer, which of course means effectively a gun registry. DFL lawmakers also banned supposed conversion therapy for LGBTQ people, which is much more controversial than it sounds like. When they're talking about conversion therapy, they're no longer talking about the horrible old practice of taking teenagers who were gay and electroding them or something. They're talking about, actual therapy for people struggling with their sexual identity, for example. He legalized recreational marijuana. He required a carbon-free electric grid by 2040. Again, that is such insanity. That is not going to happen. That is not going to happen because the alternative sources of electricity, like wind and solar, are simply not up to the task of supplying electricity to an entire state on the base in the middle of some of the coldest areas of the United States. Adopted a new reading curricula based on phonics, and passed a massive $2.58 billion capital construction package. So that is tax hikes, that is spending, that is Tim Walz in a nutshell. And of course it is Tim Walz in a nutshell. Remember, Tim Walz is effectively a socialist. And he literally said it. This is 1 week ago. He was saying that one person's socialism is another person's neighborliness, which comes as a shock to everybody who used to live in Cuba, where socialism was another word for your neighbor comes and shoots you in the face.
For one thing, don't ever shy away from our progressive values. One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness.
I mean, this is insane. The fact that you picked him and now Josh Shapiro is such a gift to Trump. It's such a gift. Just run ads with Harris, Walz, all day long. All day long. That's all. Just their record. They're the most radical ticket in American history by far. They make Barack Obama look like a moderate. That's how radical this ticket is. They are insanely radical. So she didn't pick a swing state guy. She didn't pick somebody who is moderate. She picked somebody from a non-swing state who is not moderate and also is not particularly charismatic. But we all know the one thing that he was that we really, really needed was Gentile. That was like the biggest thing. Couldn't be a Jew. That was the biggest thing because the pro-Hamas base won't riot, presumably in Chicago. If she had picked a Jew, they might have. But now that it's Tim Walz, a white guy from Minnesota who's not Jewish and who presumably supported the JCPOA, the Iran deal under Barack Obama, well, that means that the rioters won't show up because they are the captain now. The radical left is the captain now. If the Trump campaign does not take advantage, that is political malpractice all of its own. There's a brand new opportunity to reshift the narrative for the Republicans, and there's a moral and political obligation for the Trump campaign to do just that. We'll get to more of Tim Walz in just 1 second. First, let's talk about Bet Online. So you theoretically could have bet on who exactly was going to be Kamala Harris's vice presidential nominee. In fact, you could see the betting markets. They were actually right. They started to move last night dramatically in Tim Walz's favor. Bet Online could have helped you bet on that. Beyond traditional sports, Bet Online gives you the option to bet on political events like exactly this, or the outcome of the presidential election. Political betting allows you to wager on real-world events outside the realm of sports. Or if you're a diehard sports fan, Bet Online makes sports betting more accessible and convenient than ever before. With just a few clicks, you can place bets on your favorite teams or events from the comfort of your own home. Bet Online makes betting more accessible and convenient than ever before. With just a few clicks, you can place bets on your favorite teams or events from the comfort of your own home. Bet Online prides themselves on their higher-than-average betting limits of up to $25,000. You can increase your wagering amounts by contacting their player services desk by phone or email. So, while you're watching your favorite team or the news on upcoming elections, why not spice things up with that friendly wager over at Bet Online? Go to betonline.ag to place your bets today. Use promo code BEN for a 50% sign-up bonus of up to $250. That is betonline.ag. Use promo code BEN. Bet Online. The options are endless. So, back to the radical that Kamala Harris just idiotically picked for her vice president. Again, I'm feeling a little pep in my step this morning, given the fact that she didn't just betray that she's a radical. She betrayed that she's an incompetent. She's an incompetent. This is a move of political malpractice by Kamala Harris, and I couldn't be more here for it. I'm pretty here for it. Here is Tim Walz defending the Afghanistan withdrawal in July 2024. Good luck with this particular point of order, given the fact that it was precisely the Afghanistan withdrawal that sank Joe Biden's political hopes all the way back in 2021.
Exiting a conflict is never going to be good. That situation was horrific. There were Minnesotans on the ground that were providing aid to that. I think the biggest thing is an understanding that the way that was prosecuted, the way that we tried to build stability, was simply going to be incredibly difficult. So, yes, I served with Senator Cotton. I also know that a lot of his positions have been overly aggressive in terms of how the United States prosecutes a peaceful resolution. So, look, the Afghan withdrawal was tragic, but it was a long-standing situation that rolled over many, many months and over both terms of presidents.
Absolutely amazing stuff. Great job, Tim Walz. Please keep defending the Afghanistan withdrawal. Let's see how that goes for you. Meanwhile, it was Walz who was just back in August talking about how Joe Biden was a highly effective president. Part of that Democratic cover-up of the fact that the president of the United States has been mentally gone for years at this point.
First of all, he's been one of the most highly effective presidents we've ever seen. I sat in Congress for 12 years waiting for Infrastructure Week. He actually delivered on this. And look, Dean is a friend of mine. I love him. But I spent last weekend on Mackinac Island with Tony Evers and Gretchen Whitmer talking about how we're going to make sure that we win this for Joe Biden. Because this is not a debate about Joe Biden's age or experience. It's a debate about protecting the democracy.
Amazing stuff there. Amazing stuff there from Tim Walz. He's a highly effective president. Highly effective. Tim Walz, again, is on pretty much every radical bandwagon, up to and including abolishing the Electoral College, which he says is undemocratic. Again, could she have picked anybody who more resembles Bernie Sanders than Tim Walz? Hard to think of one.
I do believe the Constitution is a living document. I think Jefferson's quote about as mankind progressed and as technology progressed, the document was to progress with it as how you deal with these things. But I do think you have to be very careful about some of those core principles. It always seems to me, going back to the Senate and the filibuster, the Electoral College seems very undemocratic to me. I mean, I think at first blush.
Simping, man, they are simping for the radicals. They are simping for them. And then, of course, one of his signal accomplishments in the state of Minnesota is that he signed into law an order protecting access to, quote, gender-affirming care for youth, which we all know what that means at this point. And then he called conservative states bullies for banning transgender surgeries and hormone treatments for minors. He also suggested that Minnesota agencies should not try to assist other states who are trying to penalize people receiving gender-affirming care. Again, gender-affirming care is a euphemism. He also suggested that the state, schools, for example, should not notify parents if their children show up to school and claim they are of another gender. That is who Tim Walz is. Here is Tim Walz signing this into law alongside Hildy Edwards, a 12-year-old who advocates for the rights of trans children with her parents, Hannah and Dave. Here is Tim Walz.
We know this urgency is real, thus the need of an executive order today. Now, I want to be clear. I can't pretend to understand what goes through people's minds. I cannot imagine the stress that families and individuals go through. But here in Minnesota, we're going to be a place of refuge to make sure that they feel safe and welcome. And I don't know what a group of people in Pierre who decide to make life miserable and more dangerous for people are thinking, but it's not going to happen in Minnesota.
Amazing stuff there from Tim Walz on every single issue. He is wide open to moderate Americans. Wide open. By the way, dude also has a bunch of scandals under his name. It's pretty much the worst pick of all. I'm elated. It's the worst pick she could have made. Of all the people, worse than Whitmer, who at least is a popular governor of a swing state, certainly worse than Shapiro. Worse than Mark Kelly, who's a fairly popular senator from a swing state. Like, what's the upside here? Presumably the upside is trying to get a bunch of upper-class suburban liberals in Philadelphia or in Wisconsin to think that this is a dude with blue-collar appeal. Sure. So what exactly happened? Well, Jim Garrity, who writes for National Review, he says this: the dirty, not so little secret about Walz is he's not a good manager. On his watch, the Minnesota government has endured one embarrassing scandal after another, entailing mismanagement, fraud, waste, and abuse. Let's start with the state's handling of hundreds of millions of dollars of Minnesota's Feeding Our Future, the largest COVID aid fraud scheme in the country. Announcing a federal fraud indictment against the Feeding Our Future nonprofit, FBI Director Chris Wray called it, quote, an egregious plot to steal public funds meant to care for children in need in what amounts to the largest pandemic relief fraud scheme yet. The defendants went to great lengths to exploit a program designed to feed underserved children in Minnesota amid the COVID-19 pandemic, fraudulently diverting millions of dollars designated for the program for their own personal gain. This nonprofit used $250 million in federal funds in Minnesota to purchase luxury cars, houses, jewelry, and coastal resort property abroad. So what exactly is the problem? Well, Tim Walz was the governor, and a state legislative audit concluded the Minnesota Department of Education was asleep at the wheel for years and had ignored red flags concerning the nonprofit. Local CBS News affiliate, quote, the report from the legislative auditor found the Minnesota Department of Education's last review of Feeding Our Future was in 2018. It found serious issues with the nonprofit's operations, and it failed to follow up. The report said that by 2019, the nonprofit managed more than 6 times the number of sites than the average multi-state sponsor participating in the program. So in other words, the state kept shoveling money to a fraud outfit, and Tim Walz was the governor. How about 2022? Walz, according to Garrity, signed into law a plan to pay Minnesota's frontline workers hero pay for their hard work during the pandemic. The state's initial estimate was roughly 667,000 people were eligible for hero pay, meaning they'd receive $750 each. Within a few months, the state announced that more than 1 million Minnesotans had qualified, reducing that payment to a little less than $500. If an estimate that's off by roughly 333,000 people raises your eyebrow, you have good instincts. Not only were a significant portion of the recipients for hero pay ineligible, some of them were dead, full-scale dead. The same thing was true in the Minnesota state government's handling of grants for arts and behavioral health. Minnesota Department of Health and Human Services Behavioral Health Division did not comply with certain grant management policies matching similar findings of a 2021 audit. Again, that is according to the Minnesota Reformer. And the list goes on and on and on. He's a bad manager. He's a bad governor. He's unbelievably radical. He's from a non-swing state. And there's only one reason she picked him. And we all know what that reason is. And it has a lot of parentheses around it for those who are aware of online nomenclature. And here's the thing. People don't vote based on the vice president. They do vote based on the perception of the ticket. In 2008, John McCain, to use again, Republican example, John McCain was perceived as a maverick. He was perceived as a moderate. And then he selected Sarah Palin as his vice presidential candidate. And that opened him up to lots of attacks that he was actually just super right-wing. Secretly, he was a crypto super right-winger. He would have been better off picking somebody like Senator Joe Lieberman, who had shifted from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party just for John McCain. That would have been a smarter pick for him because then the ticket would have been quote-unquote moderate. Okay, here, Kamala Harris is a radical. Everyone who knows her knows she's a radical. Every policy that she has ever voted for is radical. Every policy she's ever stumped for is radical. And yet she is attempting right now to avoid media scrutiny and pretend that she's actually secretly a moderate. But there is no moderate Kamala Harris. There is only radical Kamala Harris. And by picking somebody who is clearly and openly politically radical like Tim Walz, she has merely underscored what she is, a double radical candidacy. This is a double radical candidacy in the same way that Donald Trump picking J.D. Vance said that this was a MAGA-only ticket. This is a radical left-only ticket. That is what this is, which is going to make it a lot harder for her to shake off stuff like 2017 Kamala, who, again, there's lots of 2017 Kamala. Here's 2017 Kamala saying, we all need to stay woke. This is the Kamala Harris that we know and love and who will be your president if you don't stop her now.
We have to stay woke. Like, everybody needs to be woke. And you can talk about if you're the wokest or woker, but just stay more woke than less woke. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing stuff. And that, of course, is who is running. Politico ran an entire piece yesterday about how she's being pushed to her left by her base. And she will fall for it every single time. Because again, Democrats have become audience captured. They are audience captured by their radical base. And that is going to hurt them so badly if Trump can prosecute the case. And if the media ever decide, to ask her a question at some point, we're now on, by our counter, day 17 of her not being asked a serious question. Day 17. She's been the presumptive Democratic nominee since Joe Biden dropped out of the race. That is well over 2 weeks ago. She now has a VP candidate. We are in the middle of an economic meltdown. We're in the middle of a possible war in the Middle East. She just chose the most radical candidate she could for vice president of the United States. Now might be a good time to ask her a question, you jackasses in the media. Now might be a great time for you to actually, get her to sit down for an interview with, say, Tim Walz and ask them about bailing out rioters in Minnesota. And as for Donald Trump, Trump should be running hundreds of millions of dollars in ads defining this candidate, defining his opponent. And he should say to Kamala Harris, I want to debate you now until the election every single day, every single week. The more the merrier, more exposure of Kamala Harris, more of the American people getting to know just how radical and insane she is. And they let the mask slip. They let it slip. They couldn't even hold it for 3 weeks. The mask was, she's moderate. Democrats are moderate. They can stave off their radical base, the Cori Bush, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, AOC. They can stave them off. Those are people that are just patting on the head, for a little bit of enthusiasm. Or alternatively, beneath the mask, they are Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and AOC and Bernie Sanders. And that's what you are seeing right now. That's what that Tim Walz pick means. In just a second, we're going to get to the economic meltdown to come. Kamala Harris is the vice president of the United States. We'll get to that in just 1 second. First, I know what it's like to start and run a business, and saving time is a major key. If you're a finance professional looking for a better way to maximize productivity and cut wasteful spending, Ramp could be for you. Ramp is a corporate card and spend management software designed to help you save time and put money back in your pocket. With Ramp, you can issue cards to every employee with limits and restrictions. You can also stop wasting time at the end of every month by automating your expense reporting. Ramp's accounting software automatically collects receipts and categorizes your expenses in real time so you don't have to. You'll never have to chase down a receipt again. Your employees will no longer spend hours submitting expense reports. The time you will save each month on employee expenses will allow you to close your books 8 times faster. Ramp is so easy to use. Get started in less than 15 minutes, whether you have 5 employees or 5,000. Get $250 when you join Ramp. Just go to ramp.com/Shapiro. Again, that's ramp.com/Shapiro. That's ramp.com/Shapiro. Cards issued by Sutton Bank and Celtic Bank, members FDIC. Terms and conditions do apply. Go check them out right now. That is ramp.com/Shapiro. Also, if you didn't notice, the Daily Wire is about to release its first film in actual theaters. It is amazing. It's hilariously rude awakening for the woke. From the white dudes who brought you What is a Woman comes America's next great question. Am I racist? Only in theaters September 13th. From the sick mind of Matt Walsh, who went undercover in the belly of the DEI beast, surrounded by professional race baiters and diversity grifters. All he had to do, by the way, was put on a wig. And it's like Clark Kent. Suddenly they had no idea it was Matt Walsh. Here's what you need to know right now. Pre-sale tickets are available August 15th. Mark your calendars. That date is super important. Watch the trailer right now. www.miracist.com. Get a taste of a comedy to die for. DEI. You see, it's a pun. www.miracist.com. Okay, meanwhile, while all of this is happening, Kamala Harris has not been asked a single serious question. Like 0 serious questions. Meanwhile, yesterday, the Dow plummeted over 1,000 points. 1,000. Okay, and the reason that the Dow plummeted 1,000 points is because people are very much afraid of a recession that is coming. It is unclear exactly how the giant sell-off in the Japanese stock market is going to infect other financial institutions. If you over-leverage on a bad bet, then very often that can sink you. We have seen that with a bunch of different financial institutions over the years, ranging from, say, Bear Stearns all the way back to 1997, 1998, when you saw financial firms that were falling apart having bet on the dot-com bubble. According to the Wall Street Journal, the unwinding of some Wall Street's most popular trades intensified on Monday, sending Japanese stocks to their worst day since the 1987 market crash, walloping U.S. technology shares. U.S. stock indices opened sharply lower, tracing declines in international markets before recovering somewhat after a survey of purchasing managers showed the services sector expanding last month at a slightly higher rate than expected. So what exactly is happening? Well, I mean, part of this is sort of the natural exuberance that was created by easy money for years. Neil Ferguson, who is a historian and also a financial historian, he says the first half of the delusional year was characterized by an AI bubble propelled by investors' belief in tall tales about what large language models could do for everyone's business, thereby guaranteeing NVIDIA, Microsoft, Google, Meta vast profits as far as the eye could see. Stronger than expected economic growth in the United States, which was the result of unrelenting fiscal stimulus, expectations of Fed interest rate cuts this year, though with uncertainty about the precise timing because of all of those bubbles and because of the stronger than expected growth. A rising probability of Donald Trump being reelected, which investors were quietly content with in a, quote, don't tell my wife kind of way. Neil's point here is that there are a lot of investors who pretend to be on the left, but secretly they want Trump reelected because it's better for their pocketbook, as everybody knows. Also, lack of fear about a U.S. China-Taiwan crisis and lack of fatalities in Ukraine and the Middle East. Okay, now all of those things are going wrong. So as Neil points out, we have now reached the end of the AI bubble, with the crucial blows to sentiment being delivered by the venture capital giant Sequoia and Elliott, its equivalent among activist hedge funds. Berkshire Hathaway's decision to slash their Apple position came later and didn't help either. So basically, whenever you have a brand new technology, there is overinvestment in that sector. It gets really hot, and everybody decides to pour money into that sector, and then it sort of fades away. And what's left are the jewels. Right? A lot of money got poured into the dot-com bubble of the early 2000s, and then it fell apart. What was left was not the end of the internet. What was left was kind of the best companies. And you're starting to see that in terms of AI right now. Also, we are seeing the signs of a slowdown in the U.S. labor market, as Neil points out. Also, the possibility the Federal Reserve waited too long to cut interest rates and should have already done so. But the reality is, this is not about the Federal Reserve. As I said yesterday on the program, whenever you have a centralized bank controlling the flow of the economy, that is not a healthy economy. It should not be the centralized bank. It shouldn't be the Federal Reserve controlling whether the economy goes up or down. They are in the job of providing stability and solidity, not in the job of injecting cash into the economy or sucking cash out of the economy as though they are the great money managers in the sky. Beyond that, obviously, the international situation grows worse and worse. Everybody can see that, and people are becoming a little bit disquieted by it. And Kamala owns all of this. Remember, the theme of this campaign, if you're a Republican, if you're a Trump fan, if you want Kamala to lose, is very easy. Kamala owns all of it. Now, again, the media have been trying to run desperately away from this implication. They want it both ways. On the one hand, Kamala Harris is a wonderful moderate who is in no way involved with any of the insanely radical policies of the Biden administration. She's not responsible for the border. She wasn't the border czar. Are you kidding? She's not responsible for Bidenomics. It's Bidenomics, not Harrisnomics. You know, I mean, we all know, right? I mean, she wasn't involved in any serious decision like that's on the one hand. So she's not responsible for anything, but she's brand new and shiny. On the other hand, she is responsible for everything because she is the most important vice president in our history. She was the last person in the room. She is a person integrally involved in every single major decision that Joe Biden made. You can't have it both ways. The media are trying to, and they are trying to by never asking her a question ever again. But remember, it was Kamala Harris who was celebrating Joe Biden's Bidenomics in 2021. Here she was just a few years ago talking about the magic of Bidenomics.
Bread costs more, the gas costs more. And we have to understand what that means. That's about the cost of living going up. That's about having to stress and stretch limited resources. That's about a source of stress for families that is not only economic, but is on a daily level, something that is a heavy weight to carry.
Amazing. And then in 2023, she was celebrating Bidenomics with laughter and joy, right? Because she's a real person. That's what we know. Laughter, laughter.
All that, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else, that is called Bidenomics. That is called Bidenomics, and we are very proud of Bidenomics.
Unbelievable. Truly amazing stuff there from Kamala Harris. Well, she should be linked to all of it. She should be linked to all of it. She is responsible for all of it. It was just a couple of months ago that Karine Jean-Pierre was out there saying, we have the record stock market. Well, folks, live by the stock market, die by the stock market. Here is the world's least talented press secretary.
President Biden's economic plan is working. It's growing the middle class, as you hear us talk about all the time. Spurs investment in manufacturing created almost 800,000 jobs in this administration alone, and infrastructure, and outperform other countries. That's what the president has been very focused on. Record stock market highs under President Biden are good for retirement accounts and household wealth, and that is just a fact. And so, which we would never root for a stock market crash or for Americans to lose their jobs. It's something that we would never root for from here. But obviously, the stock market, again, is not the economy. But we believe that President Biden's economic plan is working.
Oh, they believe it. They do. In fact, just 1 week ago, Joe Biden, who is a dead president, which means we should probably put him on some sort of dollar bill. He's actually no longer alive. But last week he said he cured the economy, which he cured in the same way that he cured stage 4 dementia.
Mr. President, what would your legacy for
Cure the economy.
What are you going
And
to
the environment. And a few other small things.
Okay, Kamala Harris owns this. She owns it. She's the vice president. She's part of the administration. Anytime she wants, she can 25th Amendment that old dude. And she ain't doing it. Well, President Trump was even noting this yesterday. He said, stock markets are crashing. Jobs numbers are terrible. We're heading to World War III. We have two of the most incompetent leaders in history. This is not good. Fact check true. He said, of course there's a massive market downturn. Kamala's even worse than Crooked Joe. Markets will never accept the radical left lunatic that destroyed San Francisco and California as a whole. Next move, the Great Depression of 2024. You can't play games with markets. Kamala crash. And then later, Trump cash versus Kamala crash. You know, that's right. How about lots of that? That would be good. Okay, and in the meantime, this is what's amazing. This is what's amazing. She just selected a socialist, a self-proclaimed socialism isn't that bad. It's just neighborliness. She selected that guy for vice president in the middle of an economic downturn where you spent too much money. She was the deciding vote on the Inflation Reduction Act. That was a 50-50 vote. She was the presiding officer in the Senate with the 51st vote, and she voted that into law. So this is all hers. We did it, Joe. We did it, Joe. Really well done. And in the middle of all of this, they decided, it's amazing. There is a burgeoning war in the Middle East. That war in the Middle East is being caused by the Biden administration's absolute pathetic, cowardly weakness. Absolutely pathetic, this administration in the Middle East. They distanced themselves from our ally Saudi Arabia. They distanced themselves from our ally Israel. They tried to draw closer to Iran, and Iran promptly launched a 7-front war against Israel and has been attacking American troops. And Kamala Harris's response to all of that was to chide Israel for being too mean to terrorists. And Joe Biden is doing the same thing. And then, just to cap it off, make sure she didn't pick the Zionist Jew in Pennsylvania who might have won her the election. She instead picked the socialist from Minnesota to please, the Somali base in Minnesota? Amazing, high-level thinking here from the Biden administration and a betrayal of exactly what it is they stand for. I mean, it shows exactly what they stand for. We'll get to that in just 1 second. First, as you know, my days are incredibly full. Between the show, being a dad, various other responsibilities, I can't keep up with my day if I don't get a good night's sleep. That's why I appreciate my Helix mattress. Helix harnesses years of mattress expertise to offer a truly elevated sleep experience. That Helix Elite collection includes 6 different mattress models, each tailored for specific sleep positions and firmness preferences. If you're nervous about buying a mattress online, you really don't have to be. Helix has a sleep quiz that matches your body type and sleep preferences to the perfect mattress. Because why would you buy a mattress made for somebody else? I took that Helix quiz. I was matched with a firm but breathable mattress. I love it. My wife loves it. We are big Helix fans at the Shapiro house. Helix has a 10-year warranty. You can try it out for 100 nights risk-free. They'll even pick it up for you if you don't love it. But you will. Helix's financing options, flexible payment plans make it so a great night's sleep is never far away. For a limited time, Helix is offering up to 20% off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners. Just go to helixsleep.com/Ben. That's helixsleep.com/Ben. It's their best offer yet. It's not going to last long with Helix. Better sleep starts right now. Go check them out right now. That Helix Sleep mattress may be the only thing keeping me alive, given the stress levels at this point. helixsleep.com/Ben. That's helixsleep.com/Ben. Okay, so speaking of Kamala Harris's vice presidential pick. So Tim Walz voted in favor of the JCPOA, which was the Obama-era horrifying deal that relieved sanctions on Iran. This is back when he was in Congress. Kamala Harris, of course, was a big supporter of the JCPOA. She and this administration have bent over backwards to try and make room for the Iranians. They put extraordinary pressure on the Israelis, even as the Iranians are literally firing ordnance at Americans in the Middle East. According to the New York Post, President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris were briefed in the White House Situation Room on Monday after a suspected rocket attack against a military base in Iraq left a number of U.S. personnel injured. Biden, 81, said he discussed developments in the Middle East with his national security team, according to a post on his X account. Again, he's been totally missing. Joe Biden may in fact be dead. We don't know. There's no proof of life. He shows up once every so often, and then his mouth moves in some sort of way, and sound kind of comes out, and then they wheel him backstage, and then they take a picture with his body propped up like El Cid on a horse. The president said, "We received updates on threats posed by Iran and its proxies, diplomatic efforts to de-escalate regional tensions, and preparations to support Israel should it be attacked again. We also discussed the steps we are taking to defend our forces and respond to any attack against our personnel in a manner and place of our choosing." By the way, manner and place of our choosing means never, and the manner is 0. That is probably the way that Joe Biden sees this sort of thing. Because when it comes to the Middle East, Joe Biden and his entire fool State Department are of the opinion that the more nicely you treat terrorists, the better they treat you. It's all just a nice game of diplomacy. Meanwhile, Biden has been briefed that the possibility of a major Iranian or Hezbollah attack on Israel in the aftermath of a year of Hezbollah firing rockets into Israel, in the aftermath of Iran activating terrorist groups from 7 different countries to attack Israel, and then Israel retaliating by killing Ismail Haniyeh, who is the leader of Hamas, the political leader in Tehran, and also killing the number 2 in Hezbollah in Lebanon. The Biden administration, they're saying they don't know where or when this is going to happen. Apparently, Antony Blinken told his G7 counterpart on Sunday, Iran and Hezbollah could attack Israel as soon as the next 24 to 48 hours. But in the meeting that Biden and Harris had with the National Security Council in the White House Situation Room on Monday, the assessment was more nuanced, according to U.S. officials. The officials said Biden and Harris were both told U.S. intelligence expects a scenario involving 2 waves of attacks, one from Hezbollah, one from Iran, and several of its other proxies. And it's unclear who is going to go first. Now, notice that Harris is included in all of this, which means she is responsible for this crap policy. And it is, in fact, a crap policy. Yesterday, the Biden administration trotted out their useless Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, to suggest that all parties must stop escalating. You know, the people who are killing the terrorists and also the terrorists, they have to stop escalating. It's real bad when Israel kills terrorists. And it's equally bad when Hezbollah launches rockets into civilian areas and kills Druze children on purpose. And when Iran prepares a massive missile strike on a democratic ally of the United States. Basically the same. Same. Here's Tony Blinken, incompetent Secretary of State.
All parties must refrain from escalation. All parties must take steps to ease tensions. Escalation is not in anyone's interests. It will only lead to more conflict, more violence, more insecurity.
It's going to lead to more violence and more. If you lecture people, this is all Kamala Harris's policy. This is all Kamala Harris's policy. Joe Biden was asked about Iran, and what they're going to do. And he said, I hope Iran stands down. Well, and I hope for a bunny rabbit. Like, seriously, dude. Seriously, go eat ice cream and go to sleep. You are the most useless president in American history. I wish you were only useless. He's actually the opposite of useful, which is not useless. It is malevolent. Here is the non-alive president of the United States and his absolute crap foreign policy.
Do you think Iran will stand down? Do you think Iran will stand down, sir?
I hope so. We don't know.
I hope so. I don't know. Yeah, we know you don't know because you're useless. You are a completely useless president of the United States. And guess what? You and your VP are presiding over all of this, all of it. And it's Kamala Harris who's sitting in on all those meetings. So when does she get asked a question? Again, day 17 of no questions. Where are you, media? What exactly do you do for a living? What is it that you would say you do around here? I mean, I understand that you think that you're the Praetorian Guard for the Kamala Harris run for office. But at this point, you might want to ask some questions. Got an economic catastrophe in the making. We have a full-scale World War III possibility in the Middle East. She just picked the most radical candidate she could find. And you got no questions? Like, you can't get to her at all? You're just going to take the crumbs that are handed out by her press secretary's office? That's how we do campaigns now? And this is the reason why the Trump campaign must make hay while the sun shines. I go on YouTube. Right, obviously, we all go on YouTube. YouTube is chock full of Kamala Harris ads. You cannot watch a video on YouTube from children to adults. You cannot watch anything that does not have a Kamala Harris ad on the front. The Trump campaign needs to be pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into defining their opposition. There is no substitute for victory in this election because, let's be clear, while I am optimistic about this election based on the fact that Kamala Harris has just shown how incompetent she is, well, I think that the Tim Walz pick is about the worst pick she could have made here. And while I think that it's pretty obvious she forewent Josh Shapiro because her party, they don't like the Jews all that much. The Jews are okay. I think that you still need to keep her from being president of the United States. The thing I fear is that she might win anyway. Now, there is some good news. If you look at the polling data right now, Kamala Harris has had just a sweet couple of weeks, right? She went from not on the map to the presidential candidate like that. The Democratic Party, a professional party, decided to shoot the presidential hopes of Joe Biden down. They decided to basically smother the old man's presidential hopes with a pillow, Godfather 2 style. And then they put Kamala Harris in place. She's been asked not a single question. She's gotten nothing but glowing media coverage and TikTok videos of her dancing and all the youngsters dancing with Kamala and pretending that you fell out of a coconut tree. That all of that is wildly charming and lovely. She's run a series of campaign ads that include Beyonce's freedom, which of course is the mark of a phenomenal president, is that you are friends with Beyonce. That's the most important thing, as we all know. Despite all of that, she's not blowing Trump away in the polls. It's not as though she came from behind and now she's leading by 10. Kamala Harris still can't break 50. She is stuck at 47, 48%. Now, that's the good news. The bad news is the last 4 polls all show her up nationally. Survey USA has her up 3 on Trump, 48-45. Morning Consult has her up 4 on Trump, 48-44. CBS News has her up 1 on Trump, 50-49. INI TIPP has her up 46-45. The Real Clear Politics polling average right now shows that she is up in the average by like a bare 0.2 of a point. So it's still incredibly close, which again is reason for optimism because the question is, how does she go up from here? How does she go up from here? And it's hard to see how she goes up from here. Now, she could have had a big uptick from the Josh Shapiro pick because again, pose yourself as a moderate, come off as a moderate, lie about it. But this is pretty amazing. Pretty amazing that she decided to blow the opportunity. Pretty incredible that she decided to introduce Tim Walz in Philadelphia by not selecting the Pennsylvania governor. That is an opening. And if Republicans don't take advantage, that's their fault. I mean, honestly, I know the media are stacked against them. I know that the rules in some states are stacked against them. There is no excuse for not winning. In the words of General Patton, Americans like a winner and will not tolerate a loser. No more losing to these people. She is given the opening. The opening is widely available. The Trump campaign needs to reorient. They need to focus laser beam-like on the fact that this is the most radical Democratic Party ticket in history. In history. This Democratic Party is more radical than George McGovern's Democratic Party of 1972. this Democratic Party has decided to oust the moderates, to just no longer take advantage, no longer even apply for them. It's truly an amazing thing. Now, this afternoon, Kamala Harris is going to introduce Tim Walz before the nation. And we will get to know Bernie Sanders, but younger, with a Minnesota accent. And that'll be really fascinating. I mean, I'm sure that we're going to love it. But this is, what a blown opportunity by her. What a truly blown opportunity. And this is a dangerous world. It's a dangerous world. It truly is. And the people in this dangerous world that you are choosing to lead you are Kamala Harris, a wild, incompetent radical from California, and Tim Walz, a wild, incompetent radical from Minnesota. So I have a going theory when it comes to Republicans in presidential elections. It's a theory I've been developing over time, and that is that right now, America kind of feels like New York circa early 90s, 90, 91. Things are kind of falling apart. It's getting dirty out there. Times Square looks like crap. A lot of crime. Just a bad situation. And so they need someone to clean up the show. They're looking for a new sheriff in town, someone to clean it up. Do you want the progressive prosecutor from San Francisco along with the person who is helping her poo-poo the BLM riots of 2020? Or would you like Donald Trump to come in and clean this thing up? It turns out that Americans tend to vote Republican when they are concerned about safety, when they are concerned about fear of foreign policy, and Trump happens to be winning on the economy. All the systemic factors are in favor of Donald Trump at this point. He needs to run a meticulous campaign now. I understand that's asking a lot, but it means no more spending time ranting about Brian Kemp. That's not useful. No more spending time on rabbit holes like whether she's black enough. Let the media cover that sort of stuff. Instead, why not spend your time making the very obvious point? America was better between 2017 and 2019 pre-pandemic than it has been from 2021 to 2024, and it will get so much worse under Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. You might say that Trump should try to build the walls. He should try to build up Tim Walz. He should try to point out that this campaign is, again, radical, radical, and radical. J.D. Vance, just a few moments ago, he pointed out exactly this. So J.D. has been a weapon on this sort of stuff. Again, he has drawbacks as a candidate, but he is an attack dog. Here's what he said, quote, "We continue to pray for the American service members hurt in al-Assad, Iraq. I hope the news doesn't get worse. I served in al-Assad. Kamala Harris has invited chaos to reign all over the world, and our troops suffer because of it." Meanwhile, the Harris campaign sent out its first text making the announcement that Tim Walz is her running mate. Quote, "Tim is a battle-tested leader who has an incredible track record of getting things done for Minnesota families. I know he will bring that same principled leadership to our campaign." Wow, wow, wow. This is a move. This is a move. And again, it's now been confirmed, AP, CNN, Katie Rogers, who is a reporter for the New York Times. Tim Walz has been notified he's the pick and has accepted Kamala Harris's offer to be her running mate. Two people directly familiar with the decision tell me. And you know what? Condolences to Josh Shapiro, who tried to sell out his values at the last moment for that VP pick, and it didn't work. And frankly, I'm delighted. Frankly, I think that that's a very, very good thing. Again, Pennsylvania is where the state it's such a catastrophic mistake. Like 538 suggests that or Nate Silver rather suggests that Pennsylvania is the state that if it is won by either side decides the election. It's like a 95% shot that whoever wins Pennsylvania wins the election. And she just forewent that because the governor was a Jew. It's that simple. Absolute political malpractice. Joining us on the line is the execrable Michael Knowles and his cigars. Michael, I'm excited. I got to tell you, I'm excited for the first time since Joe Biden dropped out of the race, and we've had a couple of weeks of the media not asking Kamala Harris any questions at all. We are now, as I've pointed out multiple times on the show, on day 17 of zero questions being asked to Kamala Harris. But now she has made her vice presidential pick, and contrary to all common sense, contrary to all intelligence, she has picked a radical Democrat from a non-swing state who has very little appeal other than that he's like a white guy, I suppose, kind of. What do you make of the pick?
It seems like a big unforced error. I was pulling for Shapiro just so that we would have an in. I assume, at the family reunion, you could have gotten us some access to the White House.
Not related.
Oh, got it. Okay. I assumed that she would probably not pick Shapiro because, as you just said, the Democrats hate Jews right now, and the pro-Palestine people are going to show up to the DNC, and Kamala Kamala is this weird Democrat figure because she is, on the one hand, extremely radical to the left of Bernie Sanders in the Senate, and on the other hand, the consummate establishment empty suit. And she is weirdly both of those things, and the way she can be both of those things is that the Democrat establishment has moved extremely far left. The Democratic establishment is pushing gender ideology on kids. The Democrat establishment is pro-abortion up until the moment of birth. So that's how she could skirt that line. But the question was going to be, which way is she going to lean? Is she going to lean into the Democrat establishment and go with Shapiro, or is she going to embrace her radical leftism and go with Walz? I thought maybe Mark Kelly, astronaut, senator, seems a little bit more moderate. Maybe he could have been a choice. No, she said, forget about all of that. She is going to lean into the leftism. She is going to lean into the Democrat intifada. She's going to lean into where she thinks the base is. And all I can say about it is, at least she's being true to her roots. At least she's giving a clear ideological vision for the campaign, and she's sending a clear message to swing state voters, voters in the Rust Belt, the centrists and the moderates and the people who just don't really like Trump that much. She's saying, hey, vote for me. I'm going all the way left.
Yeah, by the way, speaking of going all the way left, the pro-Hamas caucus is ecstatic today. I mean, it's very obvious why she didn't pick Josh Shapiro. And as you say, it's because he's a Jew. I mean, it's that simple. He's a Jew. It's not even that he's pro-Israel, because his position is mirrored by a bunch of the candidates who are actually in the Democratic Party. He might be more Zionist than some of them, or at least he was 20 years ago. Now, of course, he's attempted to shift and move in an attempt to win over the pro-Hamas base of the Democratic Party. But I'm just going to read you some of the responses from the actual Hamas fans in the Democratic Party. Ilhan Omar, quote, congratulations to our next vice president, Tim Walz. Our North Star state governor has signed universal school meals, paid family and sick leave, marijuana legalization, and protections for reproductive rights into law. Bring Minnesota nice to the ticket. Jamal Bowman, it's Walz, baby. Let's go. I doubt that he would have been nearly as enthusiastic if there had been a triple parentheses guy there. Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, Vice President Harris made an excellent decision, and Governor Walz is her running mate. Together, they will govern effectively, inclusively, boldly for the American people. They won't back down under tight odds either, from healthcare to school lunch. Let's do this. Bernie Sanders says that he hopes Kamala Harris will select a running mate who will speak up and take on powerful corporate interests. I think Tim Walz is somebody who could do that. So the radical left is celebrating. Now, all the attempts in the world to try and pretend that Walz is a moderate or that Kamala is moderate just fell apart. I mean, true idiocy, true full-scale idiocy. I don't understand it. It makes no sense to me. Again,
I have a question
right there. It's kind of amazing.
My question is,
sure,
what does this mean Kamala is thinking? Because we recall Minnesota is the one state that the Democrats managed to win in 1984. Reagan takes 49 states. The one state the Democrats win is Minnesota. This is not a swing state. So does this mean that Kamala is on the defensive here? She's trying to shore up her Democrat support? Or is this Kamala being cocky? Is this her saying, look, we're going to win, and I want to have a leftist to be behind me, to be the legacy, to be the next person in line?
So I think that it's both those things. So I think that she is afraid of her left. I think the Democrats are deeply scared that they were going to get to the DNC in Chicago and that Josh Shapiro would be on the ticket. And you get a bunch of people with Hamas flags out front waving and shouting and burning things. It would make Democrats look super bad. And so instead, she's tried to appease that group. And she's basically taking Jewish voters for granted and assuming that Jewish voters are just going to go right along with this. I actually don't think that's going to work this time. There's some polling data that is now showing a shocking uptick in the amount of Jewish support for Trump. And there are a lot of Jewish voters in the suburbs of Philadelphia, actually. And so it'll be interesting to, also in the suburbs of Detroit, we should point out. It'll be interesting to see what the impact is there, because it's not just that Kamala didn't pick Tim Walz. It's that she specifically kind of face-planted Josh Shapiro. Everyone thought that it was going to be the quasi-moderate, he really isn't that moderate, but the quasi-moderate, semi-observant Jew who likes Israel. And she flirted, and then she absolutely face-planted him in favor of Tim Walz, which is a real slap in the face. So I think on the one hand, she's afraid of her base. She's afraid of that radical base. On the other hand, she is doubling down on the idea that she can get enough of her base out that she is going to win the election. And this, to me, has been the most chimerical Democratic vision since 2012. In 2012, Barack Obama shifted the way the Democrats did elections. In 2008, he said, I'm going to run toward the middle. I'm going to obscure all of my views, and then I'm going to win a broad majority of the American people. And he did in 2008. And then he had 3 years of being president. He sucked at it. He had moved way to the left. He'd pushed Obamacare. And now he said, the only way I can win is by cobbling together my base and disaffected white ladies. And that will be the new base of the Democratic Party. And Hillary tried to duplicate that coalition in 2016. It failed. Biden was only able to quote unquote duplicate the coalition through changing all of the voting rules, and because we had the weirdest presidential election year of all time in 2020. And now Kamala had an opportunity to theoretically run to the middle, and instead she just surrendered the middle to Trump, which is an amazing move. I mean, that is her basically so confident that she is going to be able to beat Trump just on the merits that he's Donald Trump, that she can pick whoever she wants for vice president of the United States. And so I think the confluence of both factors is the answer, I think.
My last question, Ben, for you is why not pick Mark Kelly? Why did it come down to these two? Why not sidestep the issue of the Israel-Gaza war? Why not sidestep the issue of the radicalism or the establishment, seemingly moderation? Why not go with someone totally different? I don't know. I thought Kelly looked pretty good.
So I think there were a couple of problems with Mark Kelly. One was that there were some stories about him investing in Chinese companies, which were going to come out. Two, there were some rumors that he's been a little loose with the zipper, shall we say, in the state of Arizona. And three is that she's running fairly well behind in Arizona. Like, Trump's numbers in Arizona are pretty solid at this point. Yeah. And so despite all of the Democratic loose talk about how she's going to open up the Sun Belt to electoral prospects, I really don't think that's going to happen. She understands that she still has to shore up that blue wall. There's still a better than average shot. She loses to Arizona and Georgia. North Carolina actually is weirdly kind of in play. But I think that what she was trying to go for here was that Midwestern play. But again, it's just, I'm amazed. It's political malpractice. And again, it teaches you two things. One, she's a radical. But two, she's not good at this. Like, we keep pretending that she's good at this. Kamala Harris sucks at this. She's terrible at this. Like, everyone is forgetting that her 2019 presidential race was a cataclysm of failure. Everyone is forgetting that thing was like apocalyptically bad, that it was so bad that she started off with a lead and 20,000 people at her rally. And by the end, she couldn't even get her immediate family in the room to get a resignation from the race. She quit before they even got to California. And then she was picked off the pile of obscurity by Joe Biden because he needed a black woman in the middle of BLM summer. And that's the only reason she's there. And so there was this sort of weird hope that she was going to, rejuvenate herself. And there's always this hope in politics. I mean, how many times have we seen this with Donald Trump or DeSantis? Literally every politician. It's like, maybe we'll see a new version of them. There'll be a new makeover. Really, the only politician I can think of in modern history who's had like a full-scale makeover comeback really is Nixon, right? From 60 to 68. That's the only one. No other politician does this. Every other politician is who the politician is all the way until the end. Kamala Harris is not competent. She's not competent. This is an incompetent political malpractice pick, which is why I'm excited. I think what it actually demonstrates is that she's going to run a pretty weak election campaign. I think once you get past the TikTok memes, I think once you get past the Beyonce freedom mashups and montages, I don't think there's anything there. I think she's, I've been saying this for a while, an eggshell skull candidate. I think that she looks like she's kind of normal, and then you tap the eggshell skull and it caves in. And I think that this is the Trump campaign's obligation. They cannot waste time. They cannot waste effort. This can't become Festivus, where Donald Trump just wanders around the landscape airing his grievances about Brian Kemp. He has one target and one target only, the Kamala Harris, Tim Walz campaign. And that campaign is the most radical ticket in American history. It's literally the person who presided over the burning down of Minneapolis, combined with the person who's bailing out the rioters in 2020.
In Minneapolis, exactly. With the market collapsing, with a looming war in the Middle East, it is nice to get a little bit of good news. If you're a Republican today, I think you got to be smiling at the pick.
I agree. Kamala Harris, by the way, has just tweeted, quick update. I am proud to announce that I've asked Tim Walz to be my running mate as a governor, a coach, a teacher, and a veteran. He's delivered for working families like his. It's great to have him on the team. So she's going to try to run an economic campaign. Good luck to you, lady. That's going to work out well. Donald Trump is trusted on the economy by double digits. So she's going to run right into the teeth of that. Again, I'm much more optimistic this morning, than I was last night when I thought it was going to be Josh Shapiro, which would have been a much smarter pick. Michael, good to see you, or at least mediocre to see you.
Good to see you. I might light up a Mayflower cigar to celebrate.
I think so. Again, it is an amazing blown opportunity. Michael, I appreciate the time. It's an amazing blown opportunity here by the Harris campaign. It's incompetence. It is foolishness. It is not good. It is not good. Yeah, again, the sort of idea that Tim Walz is going to be the savior of the campaign is pretty wild. He's a deep blue progressive, often called a prairie progressive. Apparently, this was Nancy Pelosi's pick. That's according to Selena Zito. She says that it was pretty obvious. It was a Nancy Pelosi pick. It's a progressive pick. All of the lines of attack are now open, and the Trump campaign would be committing a sin, a full-scale sin, not to pursue those lines of attack. Alrighty, folks, we've reached the end of the show. We'll be back here tomorrow with much more. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show.